The night before my baby shower, my neighbor dumped bags of rotten trash across our lawn, screaming, "Another brat in the neighborhood, great." I was heartbroken. But instead of canceling, we moved the party into the front yard, decorated even bigger, and watched as code enforcement issued him thousands in fines after we reported his unsanitary property conditions, all while guests watched from their lawn chairs, cheering. When my husband Mark and I bought our house in Clearwater, Florida, 2 years ago, we thought we'd hit the jackpot. 3 bedrooms. A big yard. Quiet street. Close to my mom and sister. A perfect spot to start our family. Except for one problem. Frank. Frank lived next door in a rundown blue house with peeling paint and a collapsing porch. He was in his 60s, divorced. We later found out his wife left him years ago, no kids, no visitors. Just Frank and his never-ending anger at the world. The first week we moved in, I tried to introduce myself. I waved and said, "Hi, I'm Amanda. We just bought the house next door." He stared at me and said, "I don't care." That was our first and last friendly exchange. At first, we just thought he was grumpy. Some older folks don't like change. We respected his space. But soon, it became clear Frank wasn't just grumpy. He hated people. If a neighbor's dog barked once, he'd stand at the fence and yell obscenities. If a kid's ball accidentally rolled into his yard, he'd pop it or throw it in the garbage. He even tried to have my sister's car towed when she parked in front of our house during a visit. Mark kept saying, "Ignore him. Don't give him the satisfaction." So I did. Even when I got pregnant and Frank started making little comments. "Another brat for the neighborhood. You people can't keep it in your pants, can you?" Once, when I was unloading groceries, he walked by and muttered, "Overpopulating this street with your damn offspring." I told Mark. He was furious. But we agreed not to escalate. I didn't need more stress while pregnant. I thought if we kept our heads down, he'd get bored and move on. I was wrong. My mom and sister planned a huge baby shower for me. We rented a tent, tables, and chairs. We strung up lights. My sister made gorgeous decorations in pink and gold. The backyard looked like something out of a magazine. Mark and I spent the whole day setting it up. By nightfall, everything was ready. Around 10:30 p.m., we were inside relaxing. That's when I saw the alert on our security camera. Motion detected in the backyard. Mark pulled it up on his phone. It was Frank. Dragging black trash bags. Big, heavy ones. Before we could react, he dumped the first bag right in the middle of the yard. Then he went back for more. 7 bags total. We rushed outside. The smell hit us like a wall. Rotting meat. Sour milk. Old diapers. Moldy food. It was overwhelming. Mark yelled, "Frank! What the hell are you doing?" Frank stood there, breathing hard. His eyes were wild. "Another brat in the neighborhood, great. I hope it cries all night. Maybe you'll learn your lesson." I was stunned. I just stood there, tears running down my face. Mark threatened to call the police. Frank smirked. "Go ahead. By the time they show up, you'll have missed your party. Might as well cancel it now." Then he stomped off into his house. I collapsed onto the porch steps and sobbed. My perfect baby shower, ruined. But Mark? He wasn't having it. At midnight, Mark gathered me, my mom, and my sister at the kitchen table. "Frank thinks he's won," Mark said. "But we're not canceling. We're going bigger." My sister's eyes lit up. "What if we move the whole party to the front yard? Make it impossible for him to ignore." At first, I thought she was joking. But the more we talked, the more it made sense. The backyard was trashed. The front yard was spotless. And Frank hated attention. What better revenge than turning the whole block against him? We spent the rest of the night moving everything. By sunrise, the tent was up. The decorations were even more extravagant. We added balloons to the trees. Streamers on the porch. A giant sign that said, "Welcome, baby Emma." Neighbors started noticing. I told them what Frank had done. Turns out, he'd harassed everyone. From the single mom across the street to the retired couple 2 doors down. People were furious. One neighbor, Joe, even brought extra lawn chairs. If he wants a show, let's give him one. Mark wasn't done. He and Joe walked the perimeter of Frank's property, staying on the sidewalk, totally legal, and took photos. Piles of rusted car parts. Mildewed tarps. Buckets full of green, stagnant water. Old furniture. More black trash bags. And what looked like a nest of rats living under a broken shed. It was disgusting. Mark submitted everything to the city's code enforcement online portal. We also filed a police report for illegal dumping and trespassing. Thanks to our security footage, we had ironclad proof. By noon, the baby shower was packed. More than 30 guests. Even neighbors who barely knew us stopped by with gifts and food. Mark set up a portable speaker. The music was cheerful, but the mood? Pure anticipation. Everyone kept glancing at Frank's house. At 1:03 p.m., 2 white code enforcement trucks rolled up. 2 officers got out. Clipboards in hand. The officers knocked on Frank's door. At first, he didn't answer. Then he flung the door open, already yelling. From where we sat, we could hear bits and pieces. "This is harassment. You can't tell me what to do on my own property." The officers stayed calm. They pointed to the violations. One of them took more photos. Frank's face turned red. He kept waving his arms like he was trying to swat them away. After 30 minutes, the officers posted 6 bright orange violation notices on his window. The fines? Thousands. And he had a deadline to clean everything up or face more penalties, and potential court action. Frank stormed back inside, slamming the door so hard a shutter fell off his window. The crowd in my front yard cheered. The cheering died down, but the energy stayed. My guests lounged in their chairs, sipping lemonade like it was a front row seat to justice. Frank kept his curtains pulled tight. But we all knew he was watching. By late afternoon, as the party wound down and guests were leaving with goodie bags, Mark got a call. It was Officer Reynolds, the one handling our dumping report. "I reviewed the footage you sent," he said. "Crystal clear. We'll be issuing Frank a citation for illegal dumping and trespassing. Might even escalate to misdemeanor charges if the city attorney agrees." Mark grinned. "That's great news. My wife's been through hell with this guy." Officer Reynolds hesitated. "There's something else. We ran his property history. This isn't his first strike. He's been cited before. Multiple times. But he always pays the fine last minute and keeps pushing the limits. This time, the city's ready to take real action." I could barely believe it. All the stress, the tears, the ruined backyard. Maybe it was finally going to pay off. But Frank wasn't done. The next morning, while I was sitting out front with my sister, feeding the birds, we noticed a small sign staked in our front yard. It hadn't been there yesterday. "No more kids on this street, keep it quiet." My sister ripped it out of the ground, furious. This psycho is doubling down? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my neighbor Joe. Frank had posted in the Nextdoor app. Under the headline "Young Couple Harassing Elderly Man," he wrote a whole fantasy about how we were bullying him. He claimed we'd spread lies, damaged his property, and now we were rallying neighbors to drive him out. It was a blatant, desperate lie. The comments were brutal. "Frank, we all saw the code enforcement trucks. You trashed their yard, now you're playing victim? Try cleaning your rat nest before accusing others." Joe sent me screenshots. One by one, neighbors were calling Frank out. By noon, the post was removed by the app moderators. But Frank wasn't just losing the neighborhood, he was losing his grip. 2 days later, Mark noticed someone walking through our front yard early in the morning. It was Frank. And he wasn't alone. He had 2 strange men with him. One carried a tape measure. The other had a clipboard. Mark confronted them. "What are you doing?" Frank sneered. "Getting an estimate. For a fence. You won't be trespassing into my yard anymore." Mark folded his arms. "We've never stepped foot on your property. But you sure have on ours." The man with the clipboard looked uncomfortable. "We're just here to measure, sir." That's when Joe came outside, phone in hand. "Hope you guys have permits. That fence line runs right up against the sidewalk easement. Code enforcement might want to have another chat." The workers stopped measuring. One muttered, "We'll call before we dig. If we even take the job." They left. Frank glared at us all. This isn't over. But it was getting very close to over. That afternoon, a letter arrived from the city. Frank was not only facing his existing fines. Due to repeat violations, his property was now under special compliance review. Meaning? If he didn't clean up everything within 30 days, the city could forcibly abate the property, clean it themselves and slap him with the bill. Or worse, initiate court proceedings to deem it a public hazard. Frank must have gotten his copy of the same letter. Because that night, around 11 p.m., we heard loud banging and shouting. Frank was in his backyard, tearing apart the broken shed with a crowbar. Metal screamed as he ripped at the rotting walls. Trash flew everywhere. He was trying to clean up, but only made it worse. The next morning, code enforcement was back. And they didn't look happy. By now, the entire street was buzzing. Frank had crossed too many lines. Neighbors were done being quiet. They started emailing the city directly. Not just about the trash or the shed but about every time Frank had harassed someone. One neighbor, Mrs. DeWitt, she's 73 and doesn't take crap from anyone, even told the city she was willing to testify if things went to court. "I've got notes from every time he yelled at my grandson for riding his bike. Enough's enough." Even people from the next street over joined in. Frank wasn't just a neighborhood problem. He was a community problem. 2 weeks after the baby shower, Frank's 30-day deadline was almost up. But instead of cleaning, he was making it worse. Neighbors reported hearing him late at night, smashing things in his backyard. Mark and I stayed alert, but we didn't confront him. We let the city handle it. Then came the final straw. One morning, I walked outside to find our new front yard banner slashed to ribbons. The pink and gold "Welcome, Baby Emma" sign. It had been fine at midnight. By 6 a.m., it was destroyed. And under the shredded fabric? A handwritten note. "Crybabies don't deserve respect." My stomach dropped. I knew it was Frank. But this time, Mark didn't just call the city. He called the police. That afternoon, 2 officers came to take our statement. We showed them the note, the slashed banner, and, most importantly, more security footage. Frank, creeping across our yard in the dead of night. Knife in hand. The officers didn't say much at first. They just nodded and took notes. But as they left, one officer turned and said, "You won't have to deal with him much longer." The next day, exactly 30 days after Frank's code violations were posted, the city arrived with a full crew. Trucks. Code enforcement. Animal control. Even a police officer stood by. Neighbors gathered on lawns, whispering. Some sat in chairs again, just like at the shower. Frank came outside yelling, but the city officials didn't flinch. "You failed to comply," one officer told him. "We're proceeding with abatement." Workers tore down what was left of the rotten shed. Hauled away rusted car parts. removed the trash. Animal control took 4 stray dogs and 3 feral cats from his yard. And the biggest bombshell? When they lifted a tarp near his fence, they found an illegal dump site. Frank had been hoarding garbage and broken appliances not just from himself, but from other people, charging shady dumping fees under the table. That meant felony environmental violations. By noon, Frank was in handcuffs. Frank was charged with trespassing, illegal dumping, vandalism, and felony environmental damage. He spent 3 nights in county jail before posting bail. But his fate was sealed. The city fined him over $12,000 in total, plus court fees. Facing pressure from the neighborhood and unable to afford the penalties, Frank sold the house. He left Clearwater in disgrace. The new owners? A quiet retired couple named Ray and Deborah. They brought over fresh-baked bread and a pink onesie for baby Emma. "We heard about the drama," Ray said, smiling. "We're not like him. We love kids. Frank tried to ruin the most important moment of my life. But in the end, he didn't just fail. He gave us something I never expected, a united neighborhood. New friends. A community that stood up for what's right. And every time I see Emma playing on the front lawn, under the new 'Welcome, Baby Emma' banner we replaced, I think, thanks, Frank. Your hate made us stronger."